Hello and welcome back to the Q&A. So in this series of videos I basically just go over questions about basically anything and everything that is to do with World of Warcraft, and today we've got some great questions. If you've got some questions of your own, be sure to leave them down in the description for this video. First of all, there's a question from Ludwig Landergren, or maybe Landergreen, one of the two, who asks basically how I think the launch of Warlords of Draenor will compare to the previous expansions. He specifically asked, will it be as crashy or smooth like, past expansions or whatever have been. So first of all, I'll talk about stability, and then I'll talk about just the general launch. So first of all, as far as stability goes, well, I think that it's going to be rather stable. If we look at the past expansions of World of Warcraft, we have, time and time again, just seen that Blizzard have been able to keep the servers going and essentially not really have too many problems. I'm pretty sure the mop launch was smooth, and I remember the Wrath and Cataclysm ones being quite smooth, so I see no reason why there should be anything different this time around. Well, I suppose this does appear like, an expansion where there's a lot of people who are coming back to the game, so maybe they will have particularly high player rates, whatever, at the very first day, but I'd say that overall it should be pretty darn smooth. Now, I'm going to tie this question into another one that came from Tyler Camp, who asked, do I think the culture of fast-paced dungeon running will have an effect on how people do in dungeons and raids in Warlords of Draenor? And he said he's also talked to a few healers who have quit because they just can't handle the way healing is and how difficulties panning out and stuff like that. I think these are both really relevant questions because they all are kind of entwined with how the expansion is going to do at its launch. So, time to talk about the actual in-game stuff. First of all, I think that as far as dungeons go, there's going to be a learning period, and it's going to be a hard learning period. It will be paved with the blood of dead tanks, dead DPS, and dead healers. As far as trash stuff goes, I think that a lot of the burden falls on the tanks. The Miss Pandaria style tanks are going to die. They are going to kill everyone if they continue to pull multiple packs at a time. Now, when I say the mop style tanks, I don't mean anyone who pulls multiple packs, because when I tank, I pull multiple packs, because that's what you do. I mean the people who don't understand difficulty, and who just think that, you can pull as many packs as you want, and if you die, it's the healer's fault. Those people are going to get a lot of us killed, and trust me, even in the beta, I have died many times to the hands of a tank who thinks they can basically take on the entire world, and that it's only the fault of the healer. As well, on the healer front, there's been a bit of a change up with things. Overall, I think it's got to the point now on the beta where stuff feels decently balanced from what I've heard. Basically, it takes mobs twice as long to kill players, but of course it takes healers twice as long to heal them back up. So it's definitely turning into a different kind of playstyle. And then, of course, on top of that, the dungeons are more difficult, especially the heroics. The normals, though, are pretty much mop heroics, so it shouldn't be too bad. I'd say that overall, this increase in difficulty and the mechanical changes will lead to some interesting issues at the very, initial part of Warlords of Draenor. However, they will not be anywhere near as problematic as the initial period of Cataclysm. When Cataclysm launched, we had dungeons which were too hard for random groups. They absolutely were. Thankfully, in WoD, that difficulty level is being catered for by challenge modes. And we also had a problem where mana regen was absolutely borked for healers at a starting level of gear. All this stuff just meant that a lot of people died, and it was an absolute mess, and it's one of the reasons why there was, in some cases, a bit of a drop-off going on with players in that expansion, which really did suck, because a lot of people just, they had enough of having their time wasted. Will that happen in Warlords, though? I don't think it will happen that much. Sure, the initial weeks will be kind of rough, but people will learn, and thankfully also, if all you want to do is LFR, well, the gear that comes from normal dungeons will be enough to do that, so hopefully those people will not be trying to do as many heroic dungeons. We'll just have to see how it all pans out, but I think that on the dungeon front, stuff should be pretty good. As far as raids go, well, the raids, as far as I can tell from all the testing and stuff like that, are going to be pretty great, just like many of the mop ones, which I think were all great raids, bar the Klaxi one. But yeah, I think the raids will be great, on the PvP front, I think there might be a few hitches as people get used to the fact that health pools and all that stuff is way different. There's less CC, and in general, it seems like the pace is a little bit slower. So maybe there could be a decent-ish drop-off from the PvP community if people don't like that new style of gameplay, in comparison to the very high-octane stuff that was going on with Miss Pandaria. So really, for Warlords, it's just going to be the usual affair, with there being loads of system changes and stuff like that. But I'd say that perhaps there will be a few issues with, with people dropping off and stuff like that. And I'd say that the main solution to all this is just to play with your guild. Go watch my video about the top reasons why, the good stuff for guilds and Warlords. That'll fill you in on all my thinking on that topic. But yeah, I think that overall it should be a pretty smooth launch, and hopefully it'll go quite well. Certainly none of the patch 5.0 problems related to daily quests will happen. However, I'm still not completely enamored with the Apex system, Crystal system, or the reputations that are included at 6.0. Next, I've got a question from Ozero, who asked whether I think we'll get a new city in Azeroth. And he said either a capital or a kind of like new race thing, or maybe a capital for the gnomes or the goblins. Alright, so I think that we will probably get a new city in Azeroth at some point. That would make sense, because I'd imagine we'll probably go back to Azeroth at some point in the future, and unless Blizzard do a complete revamp to Stormwind and Orgrimmar again, I don't think we'll be hanging out in those places. Personally, I think that any expansion, or at least the next expansion to happen in Azeroth, will involve Kul Tiras as the main kind of alliance place, and maybe some equivalent for the Horde. So I'd say we could get a major alliance city inside Kul Tiras. Now that would be the whole expansion that's to do with the Naga and, the South Seas and all that stuff. So I think that could definitely happen, and yeah, that's where I think a new city on Azeroth would make a lot of sense. In terms of other places, well, I mean, if you go south you hit Pandaria, if you go north you hit Northrend. Maybe you could head off to the Forgotten Sea and find something there. I mean, who knows what's there? Blizzard could basically pull it out of their arse, and maybe they will do that at some point. But yeah, I'd say that really the most likely thing for Azeroth is, well, Kul Tiras / the Horde equivalent, or maybe Undermine, which is the big goblin sort of faction city that we've never even, I don't even think we've seen in any of the Warcraft universe, but we do know that it exists. So I'd say that's what's most likely in terms of a new city. Next, I've got a question from Ellison, who asked, essentially, since the server merges, there has been a bit of a problem for them anyway, and then in some areas like the Timeless Isle, it's been a tad unplayable because there's been so many people, and do I think this will continue in Warlords of Draenor? Well, I think it will somewhat continue, sort of, in a way, and basically, you still do have kind of the equivalent of the Timeless Isle. Every day you'll get a choice between two different quests at your garrison. Now these quests will send you into level 100 subzones in Draenor. From what I can see, most people will get, well, everyone on a server will get the same choice of 2 every day. Of course, that choice will vary from day to day, but on a given day, everyone will get the same choice. That means that on one of those days, it will be decently packed, but you will have players split between 2 different places instead of everyone being funneled into the Timeless Isle. So I suppose it should be a decent bit more playable. Of course, there's also other stuff to do out in the world, like, hunting rares, collecting treasures, and doing ashrans, so there's also stuff to drag people away from those zones. In Pandaria, once you were done with, well, Pandaria, and, all you had left was the Timeless Isle, that's where you spent a lot of your time. It seems like for patch 6.0, you'll be spending a lot of your time in, well, the world, in all of the zones, which I think is a pretty good thing. So maybe this will continue to a lesser degree, but I don't think it will be as bad as some of the craziness that went on with the Timeless Isle. And finally, I've got a question from Colin McMeanman, who asked, what do I think of RNG drops? Do I think other games do gearing up better? And would a currency system be better or fairer? First of all, I want to tackle the idea of a currency system, and just in general RNG in game design. So the thing about RNG is that it is on a wide scale predictable in some way. If you take RNG stuff with the entire player base and then extrapolate that out over weeks, you'll find that most people fit within the same kind of bulge of a bell curve. So that's what really goes on with RNG, and really RNG is the kind of thing that I think is okay in games. One of the big issues with currency systems is that they are highly deterministic. They are not particularly fun. You can't really have much excitement from a currency system in comparison to, boom, heroic Warforged bit of gear. Now, I do have problems with Warforged system, which I've already talked to death about, but at a base level, I do think that getting RNG drops from bosses is okay. I think it's fine, provided the game does provide some other ways to protect yourself from bad luck. In Warlords of Draenor, we've got the enhanced bonus roll system that will basically fight off getting duplicate items and all that stuff, so that should help. And there are also multiple other ways of getting gear, such as Apexis crystals, crafting, and participating in PvP. So overall, I think that RNG itself has got some more fun to it, and I just think it's in many ways a better design than some sort of solely highly deterministic system like a currency one, but it's certainly okay to have a bit of a currency system going on as a way to supplement any bad luck. Yeah, so I really, that's what I think. In terms of other games doing gearing better, I mean, not that I've played, certainly, but really World of Warcraft is one of the only MMOs that I've played to a, you know, decently high-ish whatever level, you know, with raiding. That's the only game I've really done that for. I've tried other games, but none of them have really stuck like WoW has. So I don't know if I can really answer that question completely objectively, because I just don't have that, like, wealth of experience or knowledge, unfortunately. But yeah, RNG is actually a really useful tool, and it's just about Blizzard using it right. I think that with the bonus rule system and a few things like that, they're using RNG right. Maybe they've got a little bit to go in terms of how they handle Warforged stuff, tertiary stats, and extra sockets, but we're just going to have to see how that pans out when we actually get into the game. I can hypothesize as much as I want based on how things have played out in the beta, but the fundamental kind of idea applies where in the beta, these characters are all throwaway, right? So the psychological effect of having a reward system within your game doesn't really apply in the beta, because people know that the stuff is pointless. When it's actually on live on your real character, then we're going to find out how this loot system works. So really, it's just one we're going to have to wait to see. Anyway, so that is it for the Q&A. If you've got any questions, please leave them down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.